Yeah, so the recording is started, and just
Great.
give me 1 minute to address my Indian audience, and then we can continue the interview in English, okay?
Okay, great.
तो, नमस्ते भारत। मैं हूँ वीरेंद्र मिश्रा। स्वागत है आपका मेरे चैनल पर। हम इजराइल के काफी सारे नागरिकों से जुड़ने का रोज प्रयास कर रहे हैं, और आज हम जुड़े हैं मेरे दोस्त डैनियल के साथ में। ये इजराइल में रहते हैं, और इस समय ये जहाँ पर हैं वहाँ भी काफी तनाव की स्थिति बनी हुई है, और बहुत ही खराब हालत है वहाँ की। तो आज हम इनसे वहाँ के बारे में कुछ जानेंगे, और हम इनसे खास तौर पे इंटरनेशनल लेवल पर क्या हो रहा है वो समझने का कोशिश करेंगे। बने रहिए हमारे साथ। जय हिंद, जय भारत। Shalom, Daniel. So,
Hi, Shalom.
okay. So, I hope you and your family members are fine. They're doing well.
Yeah, where I am, I'm personally physically safe. We do occasionally have to run to bomb shelters when there's a siren and the rockets are coming. But really, the most difficult thing for people who live outside of the southern part of Israel has been the psychological toll that it takes. Everybody knows somebody who's either been killed or taken. Many of my friends have gone to multiple funerals just in the past week. And so we are, I guess you could say we're as well as can be expected under the circumstances, but it is challenging for everyone.
That's very difficult. I can understand this. The current situation is very difficult for you guys, and all this event started from that music festival when the Hamas terrorists attacked that music event that was going on. Where were you at that time, and what was your reaction? Did you think that this is something very normal act, or did it ignite something that this is a full-fledged war?
At the time, I was in Tel Aviv, and early in the morning, I heard a siren because as they were launching the attack at the music festival, they also fired rockets all over the country in order to help distract the Israeli security forces
Oh,
from what was going on. And usually, at least in over the course of the last 10 years or so, when you hear a siren, there's usually a context around it. You know that tensions have been building up, that something's about to happen. And this time there was no context. I heard a siren in the morning, and I knew that it wasn't related to any news events that I knew about or any information that I had. And so I knew immediately that something was very wrong. And then of course the stories started pouring in. The first thing that of course really was shocking was when I saw video images of Hamas fighters on the street in some of these towns, including in Kibbutz Be'eri, and they were in Israeli towns with full combat gear and vehicles, and the IDF was not present yet. And of course, once I saw those images, I knew that we were seeing something that was entirely new.
oh, that's actually quite disturbing for me as well as all of my audience as well. But you know what? We need to report this. We need to show what's the truth to the people, because a lot of propaganda has been spreading against Israel, and many of the media persons are trying to do that. Uh, Daniel, when I went through your profile on social media, I happened to see that you are constantly in touch with many media persons who are covering this ongoing war. Oh no, so do you think that media worldwide is fair to you guys? I have read some articles where some of the prominent journalists they have directly denied the massacre that Hamas people have carried out. I know they have we have got the information that the Hamas terrorists have massacred a lot of innocent women and children's as well. So many people are just ignoring that. They're just denying that no such acts have happened. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think what happened was that initially Hamas was carrying out this attack in the same way that the Nazis carried out their atrocities, which is to say they were very proud of it. They were photographing it and bragging about it to the world. And suddenly they realized that the world was not as joyful as they were about the massacre of innocent people. And so, and in case your audience doesn't already know, specifically, we heard about the killing of at least 1,300, that's 1,300 Israelis, mostly civilians, the rape of several hundred women, the murder of at least 40 babies, including some of them beheaded and some of them burned alive, and the kidnapping of at least 130 people who are now held in Gaza. And and that doesn't include also hundreds of attacks that the IDF has so far managed to stop all throughout the country by sea, land, and air. People mostly don't know that that is continuing. These attempts to attack Israel as a whole are ongoing. And so I think Hamas realized that they had made a mistake in misjudging how the world would react. And so then they took a step back and started trying to deny it and saying it never really happened. But of course, we have Hamas's own photographs, their statements, their bragging. We have teams, already forces, people, so many personal stories that are behind and that are being picked up by journalists. So even when somebody denies that, there's just a mountain of information out there to prove beyond any possible doubt that this has happened and that it is quite scary. Another thing that I found from much of the press is trying to sort of build a moral equivalence. They're saying, there have been this many deaths on both sides, or we want to talk about supporting both sides. And, you really have to look at this in the way that you look at the events of 9/11 in America. That was a time when it's not appropriate when the two sides are a terror organization, and Hamas is recognized as a terror organization by most countries in the Western world, including the United States and the European Union. India doesn't officially designate Hamas as a terror organization yet, but Prime Minister Modi did refer to this attack as a terrorist attack.
Yes.
And that when those are the two sides, you can't be creating an equivalence. I think President Biden put it best when he said, Hamas does not represent, does not stand for, Hamas does not stand for dignity or independence for the Palestinian people, but for the annihilation of Israel and the murder of Jews. If you are pro-Palestinian, you have to be anti-Hamas.
Exactly, exactly. I just came across some of the images which some Palestinian of my followers, or they might have seen my videos on Israel, they shared with me, and they were claiming that the images of the murdered babies were created using AI. Have you got some
Well,
images like that?
well, I the key to all of this is to ask yourself not just what do I see in the image, but why do I believe it's true? These images are not just the images, but the statements of what happened come from medical workers, security teams, medical investigators, civilians on the ground. There are so many different sources that are concurring that this did indeed happen, and not to mention that Hamas has bragged about many of the things that they've done. So even without images, it is possible, if you're a thoughtful, critical thinker, to piece together the data out there and make it clear to yourself what you are actually seeing and whether it's believable. And in this case, the sources that confirm what we're seeing are just incredibly numerous.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of sources which are just proving it correct that these Hamas people have actually carried out a massacre in, if I'm not wrong, in Kibbutz Be'eri, right?
Well, that was one of the targets. It was
Yeah.
the first one that we were hearing about, and it was one where a great deal of the damage
Mhm.
was perpetrated. But it is by no means the only place. There were quite a number of places in the south. There was the kibbutz, there was the music festival, there were a number of other small towns, and I just recently saw a satellite image of southern Israel, comparing an image from a week before to an image now, and the whole area out there with all of its different towns is just, it looks from the satellites like just total destruction over the whole area.
Yeah, exactly. Even we got some videos of some Hamas terrorists who were firing at the residential areas. They were using AK-47 sort of guns, and they were just open firing on the houses of innocent civilians over there, and they just held them hostile over there.
Yeah, not just AK-47s. They were using RPGs, anti-tank missiles,
Yes, exactly.
small arms, and a whole variety. In fact, there was recently images that have come out in the south of the army, the Israeli forces has captured from areas that were under Hamas control and aren't anymore. And just the massive quantity of armament in there is astonishing. It's really a enough equipment for an entire armed invasion, which is what it was.
Oh yes, there are a lot of updates on that. In this ongoing situation, there is a significant international support for both of the sides of this conflict. Okay, how do you view this international response to the situation? What do you like? What do you like to see from the international community in this currently ongoing situation?
Well, the problem is a lot of the world doesn't understand what the sides are, and that's the problem. It's sort of like when ISIS was oppressing the people of Syria and coalition forces finally went in there. You didn't hear people saying, "Oh, well, I support the coalition forces, but I also support ISIS." No, they were saying, "Thank goodness coalition forces have finally gone in to Syria because I support the Syrian people and they've been suffering under ISIS." And this is a similar situation. The Palestinian, like President Biden said, Hamas does not stand for the Palestinian people, not for their dignity, not for
Exactly.
their political hopes.
Mhm.
And so, if anyone wants to literally support both sides, and I'd say the greatest supporter of both sides in the world is Israel. Israel has supported Palestinian civilians in Gaza with enormous amounts of food and medical supplies and opportunities and power and humanitarian aid for decades, whereas Hamas has thoroughly integrated its military machine into the civilian infrastructure, which creates an impossible situation now because Israel now faces a Sophie's choice. Either they can attack Hamas infrastructure, and keep in mind, a command center might be inside of a school or a mosque. Rocket launchers are frequently inside of a child's bedroom or a civilian home. And Israel faces a choice. Either you attack those targets, which endangers Palestinian civilians, or you don't attack those targets, which then endangers Israeli civilians. And in the past, oftentimes Israel would hesitate to attack targets, even if it meant risking Israeli civilians. But after October 7th, Israel can no longer take that particular risk. And anyone who really supports Palestinians should have been speaking out over the past decades against the integration of all of this Hamas military infrastructure into the civilian areas.
Hmm.
But people didn't speak out. That integration happened, and now we have this situation, which is it is truly a war crime against the Palestinian people that is being perpetrated by Hamas, in addition to the war crimes they're perpetrating against the Israeli people. It's a difficult situation, and it's hard to know what the right answer is, but I know what the answer isn't. And the answer isn't to take any action that further risks Israeli civilians, even though Hamas is intentionally making Palestinian civilians suffer as a result of that. I'd say if people can properly frame what it means to support both sides, then they would actually be absolutely in line with what Israel does and has been doing for decades. But to
Exactly.
support Hamas, I don't know if people understand this. This is a Nazi-based organization, and I'm not saying that as allegory or metaphor. They actually use the swastika. They use Nazi literature in their training materials. They idolize Adolf Hitler, and they have been speaking for decades about their desire to murder Jews and annihilate the Jewish state. To speak about both sides and to put Hamas as one of those sides is like saying that you're supporting the Nazis against the Jews. That's
Exactly.
not the place to put
Even
both
I wasn't
sides.
aware of this thing that these Hamas terrorists are using that hooked cross as their Hitler used to use in their in this flag, and that's quite
Yes.
surprising fact for me as well that they idolize Hitler even now, the one who carried out the
Yeah,
Holocaust.
even now they do, and it's in that framing. The events of last week aren't surprising or shouldn't be surprising. Hamas has been saying for years that they intend to carry it out. The only difference is that for the first time, Hamas developed the capacity to actually do that. So to support Hamas would be like saying, I support Syrians, so I'm going to support ISIS because ISIS is from Syria. It doesn't make any sense. We should
Exactly.
support both sides, but we should know who the sides actually are. It's
Mhm.
Israelis and Palestinians who are suffering under
And
Hamas just as
it's
much as
also
Israelis are.
important. It's also important to be on the right side of the history.
Yes,
Exactly.
it is. And I do believe that there will come a day when people will look back and say, and remember what happened today. And, you know, for everybody who thinks that they would have done the right thing during the Holocaust, today is your chance to prove it.
Exactly, exactly. I have been getting a lot of updates on this situation. I've been constantly monitoring what's going on. Even when I sleep in night, sometime I wake up and again I check the updates. What's going on there? Are the people safe over there? So, This conflict has gained a lot of global, attention, and there is a lot of debate that who is representing the interest of Palestine. How do you view this relationship between Israel and the goal of free Palestine in this context of this conflicts?
Yeah. Well, Israel has been working for decades to try and help build a free and independent Palestinian state. People often don't realize this, that Israel has made actually 9 separate offers of independence and statehood to the Palestinian people, and they've always been turned down for precisely this reason. And it's exactly what President Biden said, that Hamas does not stand for Palestinian dignity or statehood. Now, the Palestinian Authority government is supposedly the official representative of the Palestinian people, but even they have betrayed their people many times, have turned down many offers of peace, have failed to hold democratic elections for, I believe it's now 17 years. It's certainly at least 15. And in addition to that, they have what's called the Martyrs Fund, where they actually pay people to carry out acts of terrorism rather than working to stop it or arresting those people. They actually give them a reward. And under these, and the worst thing, and this is something I can say being here in Israel, I know more Palestinians and Muslims and Arabs than I ever did living in the US. And I think more than most people who live outside of Israel, with some exceptions. And I know Palestinians who want to speak up, who want to work toward peace, and they're afraid to do it because speaking about peace in Palestinian society, whether you're living under Hamas or the Palestinian Authority government, can get you arrested, it can get you tortured, it can get you killed. And one example of this is in 2019, there was a Peace to Prosperity conference that took place in Bahrain, and a number of different countries were invited to try and find ways of using economics to help build bridges and to help build peace. The Palestinian Authority government boycotted the conference, but some Palestinian individuals attended the conference anyway. And when they returned back, their government arrested them and, in some cases, tortured them for the crime of engaging in a peace conference. So we're in a situation where not only is there not a viable representative for the Palestinian people, but those Palestinians who do want to pursue peace find themselves in significant danger and can't express those views, which means we don't even know how many Palestinian people might want peace because they're not allowed to speak out. That said, we should also remember that there are many Palestinians who also don't like peace because the Palestinian education system teaches Nazi ideology. It teaches the ideology of war and conquest, and that Israel should be destroyed. And many Palestinians grow up believing that. They grow up with a very understandable anger, but that anger is based oftentimes on misinformation.
No,
And
they
so this
all are
is the
brainwashed.
complexity.
All are brainwashed.
Many are,
Many are.
many are, and those who aren't face significant danger if they dare to speak out.
That's true, man. Even in India, there are many people who are blindly supporting this Hamas. They thought this Hamas is representing Palestine, the Muslims of Palestine, and they were blindly supporting those people. But I have seen a good change that some of the people have started to realize that this Hamas is a terrorist organization and Palestine is different. Hamas doesn't represent Palestine, first of all. So I was happy to see that. And still, there are many people. Even just yesterday night, I remember I just got some 2 to 3 DMs from uh, some of the people from Lebanon, and some are from Jordan, Egypt, and they were just telling me that how come you support Israel? Israel is killing in a sense, and they are framing Hamas. I'm like, we have the proof in front of us. The world is watching.
Yeah.
The world is watching the all of the evidence produced by the Israeli government. Even the USA has shared a lot of evidence regarding this.
Yeah, and there's another point that you bring up there, which is that Israel never intentionally targets civilians. I
Exactly.
don't mean sometimes, I don't mean rarely, I mean literally never. And so then the question is, well, how is it possible that Palestinian
And
civilians
that's why we call
are
it
dying?
Israeli Defense Force, right? That's why we call it Israeli Defense
Yeah,
Force. That force is meant for
that's
defense.
true. And so then people will, the reasonable question is, well, if Israel never targets civilians, why do Palestinian civilians sometimes die? And the answer is because Hamas has completely integrated its military machine into these civilian neighborhoods. So if Israel blows up a command center, there's going to be civilians nearby. But if Israel doesn't blow up the command center, that command center will fire rockets and launch other attacks at people like me here in my home. and we can't allow that either. So Hamas, when we see Palestinian civilians die, that is something that Hamas is doing to the
They are
Palestinian
using they are
people.
using they are using
Also,
the Palestinian people as their shield, children as their shield.
yes, human shields as cannon fodder, and also many times Hamas rockets misfire and land right back in Gaza. So sometimes the casualties we see are actually caused directly by a Hamas rocket, and other times they're caused by Hamas using their civilians as human shields, which is why I emphasize again, if you support Palestinians, the worst thing you could do would be to support Hamas.
Exactly, exactly. This is true. And then the blame comes on Israel back.
Frequently, that is the case, and I think it's by design. The idea is to create a situation in which Israel doesn't have freedom of action and leaves Israeli people vulnerable, and that's what's happened over the course of several decades, which is that Israel has always taken a position of launching small operations, but not too much, because if you launch a large operation, it would harm too many civilians, and that is a problem. But it's led to a whole different problem, which is that because Israel has never tried to destroy Hamas and has allowed them to build that infrastructure, it grew to a point where the situation we see today is possible. And that's because of years of neglect by the international community and not stopping Hamas from integrating with the civilians. And to some extent, also by Israel making a difficult choice that at the time maybe seemed to be the humanitarian choice, but in retrospect may have been the wrong choice, which was to not take strong action earlier in order to prevent a large conflict that would harm civilians.
Oh, exactly. Uh, Daniel, can you share your thoughts on the border issue of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and what are your hopes for a resolution that will ensure stability and peace for both the sides of Israelis as well as Palestinians?
Well, I believe that if Israel carries out its stated goal of eliminating Hamas as an organization, that will already be a positive step in the right direction for Israelis and Palestinians. A lot of people don't realize that the borders of Gaza used to be open. Israelis used to go in there to shop, and Palestinians would come into Israel to shop or work, and they would go to each other's markets, and they knew each other's families. And then all of that changed. That could come back again, and that could come back with the addition of statehood and independence. But the only thing worse than a terror organization that attacks Israel is a terror organization with full statehood and independence that attacks Israel, because it would be even more powerful. My hope is that this will be a wake-up call, that the first step toward peace is building a Palestinian civil and political society that properly serves their Israeli neighbors, so that we can all actually work together toward a just and lasting peace that will benefit everyone.
Exactly, exactly. Daniel, you're giving a lot of good inputs to me. Even I wasn't aware of many things that you have just told me right now. I was aware of this fact that Palestinians are coming in Israel and they are working for the work purpose, but I wasn't aware of this fact that Israelis too visit Gaza and Palestine for some shopping purpose or any sort of other work, and they knew each other's families as well. This is something the
Well,
world needs to know.
well, and to be clear, that was the case before 2005.
Hmm.
And then before 2005, that was the case. Then at 2005, Israel left Gaza entirely. So there's no occupation in Gaza. There's no settlements. There's no Israelis. There's not even a single Jew in Gaza since 2005. But
Okay.
then in 2007, Hamas took over Gaza, and that's when the security situation started. So the interaction I'm talking about was prior to 2007, when Hamas destroyed the coexistence that existed at that time.
Oh, all right. So I won't take a lot of time of yours. One thing, no one can deny that this Hamas terrorists and the people who are blindly supporting them belong to a nearly same mindset. We both know who those people are and who they are trying to justify, and who people are trying to justify Hamas. Uh, and in the current situation, the ongoing war, the current scenario, and now since the situation is very much escalated, do you think that still in future there is a room for peace talks?
Absolutely. And in fact, my hope is that in the future there will be greater room for peace talks, because groups like Hamas and people who support them, and groups like the current composition of the Palestinian Authority government, as I pointed out, they will arrest and torture and kill Palestinians for talking about peace. There's actually a law in Palestinian under the Palestinian government that selling land to a Jew is punishable by the death sentence. This is the reality that Palestinians face, and anything that removes terror organizations from Palestinian society increases the chance of greater peace and coexistence, increases the possibility that Palestinians who do want peace will be able to speak about it in safety rather than having to hide that.
That's true. Well said, Daniel. And this is something this is this insights are very enlightening to me as well. I wasn't much aware of the situation, what's going on, and that's the reason I decided that I should try connecting with people who are currently staying in Israel. If someone is from near the Gaza border, or someone is who's in Tel Aviv, I had invited two people before you. Both were civilians, and if I'm not wrong, both have served in the Israeli armed forces, and they have their families who are right now on the front lines, who are just fighting for Israel. And they have shared a lot of horrible experiences they were recently facing. Uh, I invited one of your fellow citizens. His name was Michael, and he was just running behind between the shelters and his home to get his kids to the shelter, and then they weren't even able to sleep properly in nights because of the sirens and everything. I know the situation is quite disturbing, but in all these bad situations, India is with you. Indians are with you. Our love and our support is strongly with Israel, because as an Indian, I am very grateful to Israel that Israel has always stood up for the rights of India, for the interest of India.
Well, well, thank you for sharing that, and let me add something that at this difficult time when when many people and it's hard enough to be in this war and to be under attack, but then when you hear people in the world also attacking you verbally or in the news or not believing it, it makes it even harder. And everybody when someone reaches out, when you call for an interview and you say some kind words, when people either send a note or ask us to speak to their communities by Zoom, it really makes a difference. It's touching, and I don't know if you can understand just how much Israelis appreciate it and how much love Israelis
So
feel when people do that.
as a human being, and it's in my Indian culture to speak up against the evil, and that's the reason I am with you, Israeli people. I know I have no shame in saying that, and I feel I'm unapologetic in saying that. Because Israelis
You
have
know,
always, we share a very common history. Israelis have been tortured a lot by the invaders, and so are we. We have also been tortured by a lot of by invaders, and we are somehow preserving our culture in India. We had a lot of challenges in that, and the same challenges Israelis have faced. I know you have your ancestors who were in Israel. They suffered a lot during the Ottomans and during the Hitler's time, and still you are strong. You guys are very strong, and you're growing stronger day by day.
well, thank you for that. And there, we're also together in one other way that maybe you didn't know about, but I'll share this with you. Just a couple weeks ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu, people call him Bibi, spoke at the United Nations, and he talked about a new world in which we would have a peace deal with Saudi Arabia, which, as you know, we're working on right now, and that the future of that peace deal would involve building a new international trade corridor that would include India, Saudi Arabia, Israel, moving things then to Europe and from Europe to the United States. And the idea was that this could also bypass some of the influence of China and Russia, and that I think had a big geopolitical effect on those powers. Iran felt very
This step is
insecure
this step is
about
enough to
hearing about
change
that.
the world order.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's no exaggeration to say the events we're seeing here today are related to Iran trying to fight against a change to the world order, and that change is one that very closely involves India.
Exactly, true. So, thank you for joining me, Daniel, and all the insights which you shared. My Indian audience will be really happy to listen to what you have said, and they actually, whenever I call an Israeli civilian to my show, they all like, oh, you're doing a good work. You're hearing out to them. You're reaching
Yes.
out to them. And this is something which we need to support you guys. and the world needs to come together to support you guys and stand against this terrorism, because terrorists in any part of the world, we don't need them. First of all, let me be very clear, we don't need them, and we don't have any time to teach them to be a human, because it's not possible at all with those guys.
Yeah, and also what happens anywhere in the world will affect everywhere in the world. If you listen to what these terror groups say, they're not talking just about Israel. They're talking about America. They're talking about Western civilization. They're talking about democracies. Israel is just the first step, and that's why we have to all take a strong position together now. Because if Israel were to fall, and it won't, but if Israel were to fall, the rest of the world would be next, which is exactly why there's 2 U.S. aircraft carriers and a British naval force in the Eastern Mediterranean right now, because it affects their interests too, as well as yours.
Exactly. True. Well said. So with this, we can end this interview here. Thank you for joining, and please stay safe.
Thank you, and thank you for talking to me today.
Okay, thanks a lot. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to have you on this show, Randall. We'll connect very soon. Let this war be over, and you guys will definitely be victorious. I'm totally confident about that. All my love and support. No, we have Navratris going on right now. The festival of 9 days where we worship the divine mother goddess, and she's the one who killed a lot of demons to save humanity, and the same way you guys are killing these Hamas terrorists to save the humanity. So I'll pray to her that you guys emerge victorious, and she is the goddess of victory. She will grant you all victory.
Well, thank you. Thank you, and keep in touch.
Yeah, sure. Shalom.
Shalom.